Hey everybody, today we're doing a Villainous tutorial and I'll be using Ratigan as my example. As with every game, the first step to Villainous is setup. After you have your board set up, there are a couple of pieces that you should take note of. The villain guide. There's also an action symbols card that can tell you what actions you can take when you move to a space. You'll have your main deck and your fate deck. You'll also need to pull out your figurine or character's mover, the board or realm, and you'll need to draw a hand of 4 cards to start the game. And that's all you need to do to set up. One of the key elements to pay attention to in Villainous is your villain guide. Every villain in Villainous is different and has a different objective, as you can see from the top of the page here. Now, this guide leads you through your objective for whatever villain you're playing, and will also lead you through the specific cards in that villain's deck that are important towards achieving that goal. It'll show you any special setup things or any unique abilities that your particular villain has, and it will also show you who is the greatest threat in your fate deck to achieving that goal. For Ratigan, it's going to be Basil, of course. So pay special attention to this guide. Quickly, let's just go over some of the actions you can take during your turn. You can gain power, which means you gain one of the power tokens in the amount shown. Play a card, and you can play a card for every iteration of that symbol. Activate a card. You can fate your opponent, which means you take cards from their fate deck. You can move an item or ally. You can move a hero. You can vanquish a hero. Or you can discard cards from your hand. This card also covers all the objectives of the villains you're playing against, but will only cover the villains from the expansion you're playing. There are several different types of cards that can be played, including effect cards, which are an immediate effect that have a cost for you to play them. And then the effect printed on the card will happen immediately and then get discarded. Then you have allies, which are permanent cards onto the field that have a power to attack and defend, and also a cost to be played. Many of them also have their own unique effects and abilities. Next, we have item cards. Items are usually attached to an ally, and they usually add to the strength or give that ally an ability, and also have a cost to be played. Some items, however, are standalone items that can be played directly to your realm and give their benefits regardless of whether they're attached to an ally or not. Condition cards are the only cards that will be played on your opponent's turn. They are triggered by an action that your opponent takes during their turn, and you may play them as soon as that condition is met. Now that you understand the cards, let's get into a little bit more of the mechanics of the game. The first thing you will do every time you take a turn is to move your figurine from one place in your realm to another. Then you may take, in any order you desire, all of the actions contained within that space. For this particular space, you may gain 3 power, play 2 cards, and discard however many cards you wish to. As the game goes on, eventually your opponents are going to be fating you, which means they will be placing fate cards at the top of your realm. As you can see, once a fate card is in your realm, it blocks the top 2 actions for a space, leaving you only with the bottom ones. Both of the top spaces can be taken at any time the hero would be moved to another space. Once they are moved to another space, those 2 actions become available even if you have used the other actions already. So just as an example turn, if I've moved to this space for my first turn, I will get to gain 3 power because of the gain 3 power action there. Here they are. Then I can play up to 2 cards because of my play a card actions. For this example hand, I have a couple of items and a condition card. Now, the robot queen over here is very important, but very expensive, and I can't afford to play it. The condition card has to be played on an opponent's turn, and this item has to be attached. So this bell is the only card I can play right now, and next turn I can activate it to give myself a couple of more options for play. So I'm going to pay the 1 power to play the bell. When you play a card, you may play it to any space, not just the one you're on. unless, of course, the card specifies a space in which it must be played. And once you have no more actions that you want to or can take, you will draw back up to your 4-card hand limit, and that will be the end of your turn. Now, the actions you take during your turn are isolated only to your realm and will not affect other players, except for this one, which is the Fate action. Now, when you Fate your opponent, what you'll be doing is you'll be taking 2 cards from the top of their Fate deck and choosing which to play. Pixie Dust is required to be attached to a hero, which the opponent does not have. So we have to use TikTok, which has a power, which must be met to vanquish this hero. And I can place the hero on any space that I would like, but I'm going to do this one because it takes away specific actions that I would like to block. That hero will then stay in that space until your opponent can play enough allies with enough power to use a vanquish action to get rid of it. Since we're here, let's go ahead and play out the rest of this space, starting with this Activate space. So Activate activates cards with the Activate symbol on it. For this one, it will be take Felicia from your deck or discard pile and put her into your hand and then shuffle your deck. So that's what we're going to do. Now, it's important to remember for villains like Ratigan that have a lot of activatable items that you can only use an activate action once per turn that you move to that space. So keep that in mind when deciding what things you're going to do during your turn. Now, as you can see, we only have 2 power and Felicia costs 3. So next turn we will need to move over to a space that has some power on it. Now, as I mentioned before at the beginning of this video, each villain in Villainous has its own unique objective. For Ratigan, it's to start your turn with the Robot Queen at Buckingham Palace. However, his particular objective does change to defeat Basil if the Robot Queen is ever removed from the board. It's very important to keep in mind when your win objective has to be fulfilled to win. So for Ratigan, you have to play the Robot Queen to the secret lair and then move her throughout your turns to Buckingham Palace. And in order for you to win, she has to begin your turn in Buckingham Palace. However, if your objective has become to beat Basil, it can happen at any time. One last thing to keep in mind that doesn't directly apply to Ratigan is locked areas. Some villains have locked areas that you can only unlock if you draw certain cards from your deck. So using Captain Hook as an example here, you would need to draw the Neverland map, which would unlock the Lost Boys hideout and enable you to complete your objective. And that will conclude my tutorial of Villainous, as played by Ratigan, which comes in the Evil Comes Prepared expansion of Villainous. Have fun!